whatever the deal that may be struck, I don't think it's going to be good for humanity. There's only one thing I agree with President Trump on, and that was his statement that Iran has a lot of really good people who are really smart people, and it's a pity that they've had to live the lives that they've been living for so many decades under this dictatorial regime. I will say that there are fundamental flaws in the discussions that are going on. And unfortunately, and I'm sure the Trump administration wouldn't want to hear this, they're identical to the flaws of the Obama administration and the Biden administration, which is that none of these flaws are being addressed in terms of shutting off Iran's enrichment capability.
Now, a second round of indirect US-Iran nuclear negotiation has begun in Rome, but hopes for nuclear de-escalation have been tempered somewhat by threats to mixed messages. Yesterday, President Trump told a White House press conference that he hadn't completely waved off the idea of attacking Iranian nuclear sites.
I'm not in a rush to do it because I think that Iran has a chance to have a great country and to live happily without death. And I'd like to see that. That's my first option. If there's a second option, I think it would be very bad for Iran. And I think Iran is wanting to talk.
Iranian officials have also tamped down expectations of a deal. Ayatollah Al-Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, said this week that he was neither optimistic nor pessimistic that an agreement could be reached. Well, let's welcome to the show Debra Cagan, a former US government official in State Department and Department of Defense and currently senior advisor on security issues at the Atlantic Council. Debra, thank you so much for giving us your time. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What is your view on these negotiations that are taking place, that have begun in Rome? Are you hopeful that a deal will be struck?
Not at all. And whatever the deal that may be struck, I don't think it's going to be good for humanity. There's only one thing I agree with President Trump on, and that was his statement that Iran has a lot of really good people who are really smart people, and it's a pity that they've had to live the lives that they've been living for so many decades under this dictatorial regime. I will say that there are fundamental flaws in the discussions that are going on, and unfortunately, and I'm sure the Trump administration wouldn't want to hear this, they're identical to the flaws of the Obama administration and the Biden administration, which is that none of these flaws are being addressed in terms of shutting off Iran's enrichment capability. And I hope you don't mind if I go technical nerd here for a second.
No, please do.
But if you have the enrichment capability to enrich to what they call 3.4% for civilian nuclear reactors, it is the identical technology that you need to enrich for a nuclear weapon. So it doesn't just stop. There's no stopgap window that says, okay, you can just stop now. And all the monitoring in the world and everything else is not going to catch that secret centrifuge that keeps producing uranium at higher levels. And one other technical detail, even though the IAEA and other organizations and agencies like to talk about they're getting close to highly enriched uranium for a nuclear weapon, they're already there. We are mirror imaging of what a nuclear weapon contains in terms of highly enriched uranium in the UK, in the US, in France, in Russia, and that's around 93%. But in the late 40s and early 50s, the United States tested nuclear weapons at about 50% highly enriched uranium, and they still blew up really big in the Nevada desert. So it might not be the perfect weapon, but right now, Iran has the capability of exploding something that would be quite dirty and quite devastating.
How reliable is our intelligence on how far advanced the Iranian nuclear program is?
I think it depends on sourcing of intelligence. I think the Israelis have much better intelligence on this than we do because of just faults in Western intelligence on this. And as you know, the IAEA has not been allowed to see all these facilities for quite some time. And I would also surmise that there is no way that the Iranians could have made the amount of highly enriched uranium that they already produced if there wasn't some cheating going on, even in the early stages of the agreement. Centrifuges don't work that fast in 2 months or 3 months' time. I think that I don't want, well, you say cheating, but let's just say that a lot of activity was done while the IAEA was shut out.
And for those perhaps struggling, IAEA is the International Atomic Energy Agency that monitors such things. Then the question, though, becomes, if they are so close, Deborah, why are they sitting down at the table?
I think this is to buy time, but I also think it's to make it look like they're being a reasonable international player, because the sanctions have been pretty devastating on Iran's ability to sell oil and gas. And I think that is what's going on. And I think the Russians are very complicit in this. And I think part of this deal has the Russians being the guarantor of what the Iranians enrich and who keeps that enriched uranium and holds this. And I don't know about you or your audience, but I'm not in a position where I would absolutely trust the Russians on anything they say or do.
Some have been suggesting, Mark Galeotti's piece in the Sunday Times, which is coming out tomorrow, he's been suggesting that actually that could also tie into the Russia-Ukraine peace deal if Russia could be seen to sweeten the deal with the Iran nuclear deal. Do you expect a sort of those sort of trades happening behind the scenes that, look, if you help out with the Ukrainian peace deal, we get a bit more of what we want there, we'll mitigate or intervene in the Iran nuclear deal? Those are the kind of things that might be going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I have to say that you're inviting me to be more cynical than I had planned on being.
Right. Apologies.
Which is my want anyway. But I will say this. Do I think the Russians had a hand in convincing the Trump administration that maybe these talks should go forward? Absolutely. Do I have unequivocal evidence of that? Absolutely not. But would I bet on it? I would. And I do think there's a tie into this of Russia trying to make itself look like it's a great partner internationally. And then the Trump administration, as is its wont, will sort of buy hook, line, and sinker whatever the Russians tell them, which has been beyond disappointing vis-a-vis Ukraine. But I will say that, yes, I do believe the Russians absolutely went to the Trump administration and said, have this sit down, we'll help you out with this. It's not just Qatar who's involved in this. And going back to the original agreement in the Obama administration, Russia was always supposed to be the guarantor of making certain that Iran did not have that highly enriched uranium. And again, it bears repeating, I don't know about you, but I certainly don't trust the Russians to do this, considering they were the ones who initially gave centrifuges to the Iranians in the first place back in the 90s.
Deborah, thank you for giving us your time. Really fascinating to speak to you. Debra Cagan there, former US government official in the State Department and Department of Defense, currently senior advisor on security issues at the Atlantic Council. Coming up, what could